Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 303. My opponent played e4 and I played e5 into a king's pawn opening after the move d3. Most common moves here are bishop b5 for the Ruy Lopez, bishop c4, and also d4 for the Scotch game. A lot of interesting ways to play. d3 is a very modest kind of opening, just sort of passing the buck to black, asking black what he intends to do. And maybe the best move here is knight f6, but d5 appears to be a playable move. And it's interesting that often if your opponent will let you play d5 if you have black in these king's pawn openings, if you can play d5 and get away with it, usually leads to pretty good position. So he takes a knight take, and then he attacks my queen with knight c3. So very logical move. And the move I played, queen d8, just leads to equality, so it's fine. I mean, basically white has already given up the opening advantage by this kind of quiet play. I was kind of wondering about this move here. Bishop to b4. I guess maybe it's not as good. I mean, it allows my queen to stay there, but he can just play bishop d2 after an exchange. Says even bishop e2 can be played here, knight f6. So I guess it would go on. At some point after castling, I need to retreat the queen or take the knight. Okay, so I just retreated the queen right away, and that appears to be okay. So we get a position where black is basically equalized already right out of the opening. And after this exchange, yeah, this was a mistake, taking this knight here without even being provoked. So he hasn't even induced a weakness in my queenside pawns. He just took it, voluntarily giving up the bishop pair, and so now black has a slight edge here. But the game continues, just normal developing moves. I don't want to give the bishop pair back, so if you see the engine improves, just retreating the bishop is the right thing to do in this situation. And this knight can be chased away later. I'm going to castle and then play f5 there to hit the knight. So both sides castle. Cancel that, castle, mouse slip. And he goes with his knight back to c3, not even waiting to be promoted or pushed back to c3. He could at least wait for me to play f5 there. Okay, so I have significant advantage here. And a really strong player would go on to win this without too much trouble, I think. But I'm not that great. So knight d2. The excitement continues for a while, in other words. Queen d7. So just looking for good ways to place my pieces. Want to connect my rooks. Maybe get a knight to d4. It looks like a good square for the knight. And he counterattacks with f4. So this is pretty interesting. And that was the idea when he retreated his knight to d here. d2 here was to be able to play f4, open up a line for his rook. And that can be dangerous, but his pieces are a bit disorganized, so there's no immediate attack coming, so it's safe for me to take. And he has to attack back with the rook. And I was wondering if there was any way to exploit the loose rook here, because no, it's not defended, so it could come under attack. But I didn't see it, so I just continue with development. And he plays his knight, the knight c to e4. Back where it came from, actually. It had been there before. And so already here the engine is saying I could get a pretty good game by playing queen d4 check. I guess that wins this pawn over here in the corner. Yeah, queen takes b2. Queen d4 check, queen takes b2. I didn't really notice that, and even if I had, I'm not sure I would have played that, because these pawns on the side are not always all that important. It seems like just developing my pieces, getting good central influences is the right course here. And this is a good line for black as well. So my opponent played bishop g4, and I was wondering here if there was some tactic. I guess it's one of those positions where your sensors go off. You know, there's probably a tactic here. There's just all these. The bishop is loose. The rook is nearly loose. So I mean, there could be an idea like chasing the rook away and winning the bishop. So the rook is loose and the bishop is nearly loose. That's what I meant to say. I think I said that backwards. Because I've got two pieces attacking it and it's defended by the rook and the queen, and the rook can be chased away. So there might be a tactic based on that. But then I realized, oh, there's an even simpler tactic here, which is to play f5 and just forks these two pieces. And there's no way out of this tactic. It's sometimes one of the pieces can escape with a tempo. So like the knight could go here attacking my queen, but I can just take the knight. So no matter what he does, he's losing a piece here. He counterattacks my knight, but my knight can just retreat. What does it say? It says f takes e4 is also a move here. That's interesting, because I thought he would take my knight. Let's see how this works, just out of curiosity. If I take and say he takes the rook, I'll take back, and then he takes my knight, and I can take his bishop. Yeah, so it's the fact that his rook was loose there also. I mean, his bishop was loose after the rook is gone. That's also a factor. So I don't even have to retreat my knight. But and it seems simplest to me just to drop the knight back, and I've still got a fork on these two pieces. He retreated the bishop, and I grabbed the knight. And now he played this check. But basically, there's he can try and complicate things. Gets a pawn out of this, so he's got a pawn for his piece. But basically, I'm a piece up. So I go queen f6, trying to keep my pieces active. It's important, even if you're material up, it's important that all your pieces are working. Sometimes you can be material up and end up losing because one of your pieces is left behind and is not active. But I managed to play this reasonably well, so he also gets his pieces active. Stirring up counter chances. Bishop to d6, looking at the h2 square. d4, trying to shut out my pieces, and particularly this knight now can't make it over to... it's not as easy for it to make it over to the king side because he's controlling the e5 square there. But I went queen h6, going after the h pawn, and he plays rook h4, which I didn't see, but the rook is supported by the knight there. So a little bit of maneuvering here. Rook drops back to h3, and I bring my knight over via e7. So I'm getting it over to the king side. Anyhow, he goes knight h4, hitting my queen. And queen e4. Yeah, it looked like a good central square for the queen. It took me a while to find this, but it's not so easy to chase the queen away from that square. The rook can't hit it, and the other rook is still behind the queen, so it can't come over and chase the queen. So he plays queen h5, threatening up, setting up a potential threatening battery over here. And I wanted to do something about this right away. The engine thinks I can actually ignore this with just knight d5. I guess maybe the idea is to penetrate with my knight to this square, forking those pieces. Well, we'll see something like this in a little bit. I play knight g6, which also allows me to go to that square. And he plays knight f3. His best move is probably just to take the knight, but that also loses because I take back with the queen and I stay a piece up. I was wondering during the game if he could play this move. This is the interesting line I saw. And the idea is that the knight there interferes with my queen's defense of h2. So now it looks like he can just take here on h7, rather, my defense of h7. So I could just take the knight with my rook and let him take h7. This is, I guess, if I had gotten to this point, I might have been able to calculate it. My king goes to f7. So even though he's got this threatening-looking battery, there's no follow-up here. His rook can't easily get into the game. I'm controlling these squares. If he goes to f1, I'll just take it. And there are no more checks from the queen. This knight is defended. And I'm even threatening to bring my rook over here and win the queen. So king h1 is the engine's move, and it rates this as basically winning for white by a tremendous margin. So so this idea of knight f5 was nothing to be afraid of. Anyway, he played knight f3, and now I play knight f4, which does two things. It forks his pieces, and it defends the h7 square. So he went for a counterattack, knight g5, and hitting my queen. And I responded to this by taking his queen, but I had a much better move. Just queen takes g2 is checkmate. So that was the mate in one I pointed out in the description of the previous video. So yeah, that would put a quick end to this game. But I also noticed that if I just take his queen and he takes my queen, that then I can retreat my knight, and I'm still a piece up, and the queens are off, and so this is a pretty easy win. He went knight g5 here. I just try and keep my rooks active. He gets his last piece into the game. I go knight e4. I'm happy to exchange rooks and end up a piece up. Although I gave up another pawn, it's good for me to get rid of this rook. And with rook e6, I'm now threatening to win his knight. His knight is not so easily getting out of this corner. And back up for a second. If he had taken with the rook after knight e4, if he had played rook takes h7. Oh, this was bad because his knight is hanging. I would just take his knight, right? So he played knight takes, and but after this rook e6 move, I'm threatening just to win his knight by playing rook to h6, and after the exchange, there's still no place for that knight to go, so the knight is lost. He tried g4 and play rook h6. He went rook e3, so his knight is still somewhat trapped here. I should probably try and play knight d2 with check, but I went ahead and took the knight and remained a piece up. I noticed that I was going to be grabbing this pawn here, so his 2-pawn advantage is now back to 1 pawn. So he has 1 pawn, not advantage, but compensation. 1 pawn in compensation for the piece, which is just not enough. He tries to get active with his pawns, which is the right strategy. If white can trade off all the pawns, it's actually a draw. Rook and bishop against rook is a draw. So I need to keep a pawn on and make sure I have a pawn at the end to queen and win the game. So he pushes on with b5, maybe with the idea of trapping my bishop or trying to trade off all these pawns over here. I go back to c2, hitting his loose pawn here. Rook to e3, defending, and then bring my king up. He goes king e1, and now king g6. I decide to go after the g pawn, and then maybe this is my passing pawn that I can turn into a queen. Plays queen d1, hitting my rook. I play over here. I'm clearly winning that pawn. He goes c4. I grab the pawn, and he pushes here to attack my bishop, but the bishop has squares it can move to. It wasn't getting trapped. So at this point, he resigned. I've got the passed pawn over here, and so there's no way for white to try and draw this anymore. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed this commentary. Leave any comments if you have them in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.